Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Tigray, and today I am here to attempt to expand on and elaborate a point that a very as it turns out controversial point, very combustible point, very sensitive point that I tried to make of all places on Twitter yesterday about the point was about what I think future Tigray when it will have become a country must do with certain things about Ethiopia, such I think that kind of symbolize the Ethiopia of today, a flag and other cultural institutions that broadly represent and symbolize Ethiopia. And the point that I tried to make on Twitter yesterday was that Tigray must ban one or more of these things. Of course, the tweet was kind of framed in a very hyperbolic and whimsical way, so it left kind of the room for misunderstanding very open. And I think I would more than kind of take the blame for not correctly framing the problem and the solution, and for the lack of clarity. But it's always a problem on Twitter. I think Twitter by design makes everything more kind of shallower and dumber than originally intended. But I do believe in the essence of the point. I do believe that Tigray should at some point in the future make the point of saying that certain things that are acceptable in Ethiopia today and certain things that represent Ethiopia are beyond the pale. I truly believe that Ethiopia today is a fascistic state, and there are a lot of things that represent that fascistic state, such as the flag, and at best they should be banned in Ethiopia. But since that is unlikely to happen, at the very least, Tigray must ban them in the future. So that was the kind of the essence of the tweet. But I will come back to that later to defend it, and also to give you proper kind of reason as to why I believe that must happen when the right time comes. But first, I think it would be useful to begin with the kind of objections and criticisms and points of disagreement that have been forwarded to me. Those of you who follow me on Twitter will have kind of witnessed some sort of civil war, not just between people and me, but also other people fighting against one another, people who agree with the tweet and people who don't agree with the tweet, and it was quite a show. I think I sort of engendered some sort of mini civil war on Twitter. That's quite an achievement for an aspiring activist. But anyway, instead of doubling down on Twitter, I think it's better to elaborate the point here. That's one advantage of having your own channel. Yeah, you could always run away from the scene of the fight and destroy people alone on your channel. That's a lesson I learned lately, and I'm going to deploy it today. So I think in terms of the criticism, I think I could put them into 4 broad categories. The first point of disagreement is one that is based on libertarian grounds, which is that there is no need to ban anything in Tigray. People hate the flag anyway. People hate the things that have been used against them, and we don't need to officially ban anything. We should have kind of a libertarian attitude to things. We should leave it to people to make their own individual judgments about things. And that is the best way to go about things, about controversial things that people should be not allowed, but they should have the right. They indeed have the right to comport themselves however they see fit within the confines of law. And if they want to wave Ethiopian flag, that's fine. If they want to sing Ethiopian music, that's fine. If they want to welcome the I don't know, the head of Ethiopian entertainment industry, that's fine. That libertarian attitude is more sustainable in the long term. Also because there's the usual argument that society is better off being exposed to dangerous and to fringe views and all that. The usual Stuart Mill argument that we have been told multiple times. This would actually be an argument that I would, in a broad sense, have some sort of sympathy. But this is an argument that even the Germans could have used to say that they shouldn't ban Nazi flag, or it could be an argument that some American rednecks could use to say that Confederate flag should be totally fine. It should be left to people's individual judgment what flag they want to wave. I don't quite know about the American case, whether or not the waving Confederate flags is legal. But anyway, you get the point. So that is the argument, but it's an argument that could be deployed literally against anything that has been outlawed anywhere. And the reason why that argument must be from time to time trumped is because there are occasions when you need to make a stand by saying that certain things are beyond the pale. And in the case of Ethiopia, some of the things that are beyond the pale would be what Ethiopia has been doing against Tigray for the past 2 years. It has unleashed horror and barbarism, right? I think we all agree on that. And one way of saying that is not something that we accept, that is something that is beyond the pale, that's not something that should be repeated in any way, shape or form, is by saying that we ban the things that were used to rally people to do that, to unleash the horror on Tigray. And the flag would be one typical example that would fall into that category. The second, to make the point complete. So the reason why that argument wouldn't hold in the case of Tigray is because we have Tigray being the adult in the room, being the kind of the root of ancient civilization, to the extent that Tigray is part of Ethiopia. Although I think we have come to conclude now that Ethiopia and Tigray should go their separate ways. But anyway, within that confine that contains Tigray and Ethiopia, Tigray the adult in the room, and it has to go out of its way to make the point that what Ethiopia has been doing on Tigray over the past 2 years is abominable and must be condemned in the strongest terms possible. And we're going to do that by making a point of banning things that represent Ethiopia. So it's a way of standing against fascism. I'll come back to why I think what Ethiopia has been doing against Tigray is fascism. But for now, just take me at my word. And the second argument, I think it could be described as I'm trying to couch everything in kind of philosophical terms. So the second argument could be described as utilitarian. The argument that even though in principle we might agree Tigray should ban those things that I mentioned, it's not something that we should mention today. It's not something that we should kind of broach today, lest we turn away our allies from across Ethiopia who have some sort of allegiance to the flag. So out of necessity, because we have to keep our allies and friends and people who have been speaking up for Tigray on our side, there are things that for practical reasons, for utilitarian reasons, we must suppress. So in other words, we must self-censor so that we don't kind of alienate people. I think that's the point. My counter argument to that would be, number one, we owe it to the people of Tigray who have been denied everything, the right to say, to express their opinions by virtue of them being denied the tools of expression, like the internet, telephone, and everything. Essentially, the Tigray people have been silenced. We owe it to them to express our true opinions without any kind of reservation. So that's the first thing. There's a merit in us being ourselves, in us not censoring ourselves. We're trying to pay tribute to the Tigrayan people who have been silenced. And number two, if people are offended by us expressing what we truly believe, in this case that the Ethiopian flag and things kind of associated with Ethiopia today must be banned in Tigray. If there are people who are offended by that, who don't really make an effort to try to understand why we are saying that, to try to understand why banning certain things about Ethiopia is not just in the best interest of Tigray, but also in the best interest of Ethiopia and also humanity in general, because we are standing against something that is vile, that is abominable, that is a curse. If they can't understand that they are not good allies to begin with. But we shouldn't be really worried about losing allies who, on deeper kind of inspection, aren't really allies. So those would be my two counter arguments to that, why we shouldn't be overly concerned about the potential of losing allies because we expressed what we truly believe. The other argument, or the other point of disagreement, is something that could be described as kind of slippery slope, which is that if we make the culture of banning things kind of acceptable in Tigray, where do we stop? The state might kind of enjoy doing that, even to think that we don't want to be banned. So there is a danger of kind of slippery slope, right? And that's a good point. But that's a point about uh, it's not a point kind of about against the merit of banning certain things, but about how do we do it? How do we make sure that we are trading carefully? How do we do it in the right way? How do we do due diligence? How do we have rule of law, so that kind of a despot dictator doesn't do anything on her or his whim. So that is kind of a warning about the need for care, rather than an argument against the value in banning certain things. And slippery slope is an argument that you could use everywhere. For instance, in abortion, you could say that if you allow a woman to abort a fetus, who is to prevent her from aborting a fetus 1 day before due date, for instance, or right at the moment of labor and all that. So there's always kind of a line that you draw, and you have to be careful, of course, how you do it. And that's kind of a warning to us as Tigrayans, to make sure that we have the right mechanism, the right checks and balances, to make sure that we don't descend into authoritarianism like Eritrea. The one thing that we must do everything in our power to make sure that we don't become, because we abhor everything that the Eritrean state and regime represent. So one of the criticism again was that it was something that was kind of directed against me, that my vision or my dream for Tigray is to become like Eritrea. It couldn't be far from the truth, but I think all of you know that. And the fourth argument is one based on practical kind of grounds. One that says that it's fine to, in principle, agree on one thing, but how do we actually enforce it? How do we make sure that we ban the Ethiopian flag, the Ethiopian church, for instance, the Ethiopian, Islamic Council, and other entities that we might ideally want to ban? What is the practical mechanism of making sure that we have kind of the capability and the wisdom to implement it in the right way? Now, again, that's a good warning, but it's not argument against the essence of my kind of belief that Tigray must ban certain things. It's just kind of a warning that it's going to be difficult to execute. So those are the kind of four broad categories, and I think I have given you a fair sense of why I don't quite buy them. But I think that the main point of contention, and I have been receiving criticism on Twitter, is whether or not the Ethiopian state today is fascistic. Now, I have been using the word fascist on Twitter. I have been saying that Ethiopia is a fascist state and it should be seen as such. And a lot of well-meaning people have been telling me that is a bit exaggerated, and that Ethiopia might have committed unspeakable crimes, heinous atrocities, and it might have unleashed horror, but it couldn't really meet it couldn't quite be described as fascism. And I strongly, categorically, vehemently disagree with that. Because fascism, although you might find different various definitions of fascism, but the one common characteristic across any sensible definition of the word fascism is that it is an attempt to impose a certain way of living, a certain way of understanding things, a certain way of comporting yourself on other people by force. And if and when the other people refuse to mete out punishment, which is exactly what Ethiopia is trying to do against Tigrayans, right? the challenge that Ethiopia, even the well-meaning Ethiopians, have given Tigrayans is either you get rid of the TPLF and you kind of give in and succumb to the way of being in Ethiopia, which in its current form is the hodgepodge called Meddemer. Either you do that, or we're going to punish you by starving you, by denying you if anything, by letting you to die. So every time, for instance, we complain about aid not getting into Tigray and everything, the response we get from I'm talking about the approachable Ethiopians, not the ones who are beyond the pale, who are extremely dangerous. Even the reasonable Ethiopians, what they tell us is that it's up to the Tigray people to remove the TPLF for them to get aid. So they are even before the war started, the challenge that Ethiopia kind of subjected Tigrayans to was, don't go into elections. We don't want you to go into elections. If you do go into elections, we're going to deny you of certain basic services. So you either give in to our way of life, to our demand, or we're going to punish you. And that's the textbook example of fascism. And that's what exactly Ethiopia has been doing for the past 2 years. So if there is one description for the atrocious crimes that Ethiopia has been unleashing over Tigray, it is fascism. So my point, again, in general, in abstract terms, is that because Ethiopia is a fascistic state, Tigray, when the kind of situations are convenient, when we have the luxury of indulging ourselves in banning things, we have to go out of our way to make sure that we ban certain things that symbolize Ethiopia. Number one, because we owe it to the people who have been martyred in defending Tigray. We owe it to the women of Tigray who have been raped by soldiers who had Ethiopian flags pinned on their lapel and on their insignia and everything. We owe it to them to say that we're going to make sure that they are illegal in Tigray, that they are banned, that they are beyond acceptable in Tigray. So we owe it to our people, first of all. But second of all, we have to make a point of saying that this is not acceptable. If other people from Ethiopia and from across the globe agreed with us, then all the better. Otherwise, we shouldn't be concerned about how other people judge and perceive what we do at the country. So those were the points. This is a ground for why I truly believe that Tigray should do that, and I think that should be that for today. And thank you for listening to me. But before I wrap up, I would just kind of like to make some sort of announcement. In a couple of days, I'm going to have a really interesting and brilliant guest who has written a fascinating piece a couple of days ago. And we're going to discuss about fascism, about other things related to the issues that I raised today. So just want to let you know that there is something to look forward to. But until then, have a good time, and thank you for bearing with me today, and bye-bye.